Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to make broccoli and cheese soup. Come with me and let's get started. First, we need to prep our vegetables for our broccoli and cheese soup. We will start by peeling our carrots. Now that all the carrots are peeled, we will chop them into bite-sized pieces. Now that the carrots are chopped, we will set them aside and we will cut up some onion. Okay. Just under 4 cups of, I don't know, that's probably 3 cups of carrots. And now we will cut up the onion. I like to add a little bit of red onion as well. And these are onions from my 2022 garden. I need to get those used up before they start sprouting on me. Boy, these onions are strong. They're making me cry. Boy, the tears are running. But I don't want to touch my face until we finish up with these onions. All right, I got those tears cleaned up from those onions, and I'm going to move on to the next ingredient, which is a clove of garlic. And I like a lot of garlic, so I'm going to use a whole clove. So let's get that. 7 decent sized cloves. So let's get those chopped up. Finally got the garlic peeled. Now let's get it minced. Garlic is minced. There you have it. The food prep for the broccoli and cheese soup. I have my minced garlic. I have about 3 cups of onion. And I have about 3 cups of carrots. So I didn't have enough broccoli in my garden, so I had to go buy some broccoli. So I bought 32 ounces or 2 pounds of organic broccoli from my local Costco. So these will be the ingredients outside of spices for the soup. We've prepped all of our ingredients for the broccoli and cheese soup. So just a recap of those ingredients. So about 6 cloves of garlic, about 3 cups of onion, about 3 cups of carrots, and 2 pounds of broccoli. The other ingredients that we'll be needing for this broccoli and cheese soup include some butter, salt, pepper, parsley from the garden, Korean red pepper. My family doesn't like spice, but I'm going to kick it up a notch. And chicken broth. Those will be the ingredients for this very simple broccoli and cheese soup. I didn't mention cheese, but whatever cheese you prefer to use in the soup as well. Those are the ingredients, and let's get started. The first thing that we're going to need to do will be to saute the onion as well as soften the carrots before cooking. So in order to do that, let me get my pan on, get that heating up, and we will be using a little bit of olive oil to get the onions sauteed along with the garlic, and then we'll throw the carrots in as well and let them cook for a little bit so that they can soften up because we don't want a crunchy carrot. All right, I'll get back to you once my pan is hot. Okay, all right, I got my Dutch oven heated up. I'm going to start by sauteing the onion. So let me get those poured in there and get those sauteed. Put a little salt in there, sweat the water out of those onions. All right, I'll come back after this has sweated down and become more translucent, so I'll be back in a couple of minutes. I'm now going to add the garlic. And the carrots. All right, so we're going to let this cook for a few minutes. I'm going to actually put the lid on it so that it can take advantage of that steam to help soften those carrots. All right, I will be back in 2 or 3 minutes and we'll continue to the next step. All right, let's add a little bit of butter because we need to prepare the roux, which is how we're going to thicken this soup up. So I am going to add, yes, this is about a stick of butter. And this is real butter. All right, so we got our butter in here. Let's get it to melt. Slow the stove down just a little bit. Once the butter melts, we'll move to the next step, which is me adding the flour to help create the roux. So to create a roux, which is the thickening, you are supposed to add equal parts, some type of fat, whether it's butter, whether it's oil, whatever fattening ingredient you're going to use, and equal amounts flour to that. I don't want my soup that thick. I'm not trying to make a like creamy, mac and cheese. I just want a soup with some thickness, but not too thick. So I have about 1/4 cup of flour here. I'm going to add a little bit at a time. So not quite equal parts of butter to flour, just a little under. Add a little bit more. We're going to have to cook this flour when you're making a roux or a gravy, as some people would call it. You have to cook the flour. That's an important step in the process. Otherwise, it's going to taste like flour. So we're going to need to cook it for a few minutes. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Got all the flour in now. Okay. Can you see that goodness in there? Keep rubbing the bottom. I don't want anything to stick as the flour's cooking. The flour only needs to cook for about a minute or two, so not long at all. Next step for us here will be to add the chicken broth to the soup. I think the roux has cooked enough. So we're going to start adding our liquid. So I have a total of 6 cups of chicken broth. So that was 4. I should have poured that in a lot slower, but you know, hey, not perfect. Give that a good stir, and then I will add the last 2 cups. Okay, so that's 6 cups of chicken broth. You know, this really doesn't look like enough broth, so I am going to add 4 more cups of chicken broth. So give me just a moment to go and prepare 4 more cups of chicken broth. Right, I am back with 4 more cups of chicken broth. So I use freeze-dried chicken broth that you have to reconstitute. So I've mixed up another batch of chicken broth. 4 more cups. So that's 8, 9, 10 cups, because this is a huge, huge pot of broccoli and cheese soup. Now you may need to cut your ingredients in halves or thirds or quarters, depending on how big of a pot you're planning on making. This is actually a 7-quart Dutch oven, so it holds quite a bit. But let's get this back up to a boil here, and let's get this cooking. I'm going to go ahead and add some seasoning. I'm going to add some more salt. That was probably 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to add some black pepper. Not that much black pepper. I'm going to hold off on the parsley. We'll add that later. And I'm going to add a little bit of my Korean pepper flakes. It gives it a sweet taste and just a teeny bit of heat. All right, so now we're going to just stir this in. Let's get this up to a boil, and then we're going to add our broccoli, so that can start softening here very shortly. And I will be back in just a few minutes to show you when we add the broccoli. I want to make sure that my soup is nice and hot before I throw that broccoli in and take the temperature back down. I will be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so while I was waiting for this to come to a boil, I went ahead and shredded up some Parmesan cheese. So now we're going to go ahead and add the broccoli. And I may have too much broccoli here. We'll have to see. Let's go ahead and get this in the pan. Because, you know, broccoli will cook down. So, nope, I think this is the perfect amount. Nope, it's looking good, looking good. All right, so we got the broccoli in. Look at that, nice and thick. All right, so we're gonna let this broccoli cook down for about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. And we will check on it in 10 minutes to see how we're doing. I just wanna make sure it's all up under the broth. It's gonna have to come back up to heat, to temperature. So we will come back once we know the broccoli's tender. So we will check in 10 minutes and see how we're doing, and then we'll go from there. But we're almost done with this recipe. There are only a couple of things left to add to the recipe, but first we need to cook this broccoli down. So let me cover it back up, and we will be back in about 10 minutes. See you back here. All right, let's see how we're doing. It sounds like we're boiling pretty good. Get some pot holders. Okay. I don't want to overcook the broccoli, so I gotta be careful with it. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I'm gonna cook it just a little bit longer. And then we will add the last ingredients to it. I will cover it back up and we will go for about another 10 minutes. Let's see how our soup is doing. Oh yeah, here we go. Look at that, nice and thick. Now, it depends on how tender you want your broccoli to be. For me, I don't want it soggy, but I don't want it too crisp either. But it's going to cook a little bit more. The broth is still very hot. I'm going to go ahead and start adding the last ingredients. So it's now time to add our cup of heavy whipping cream and a cup of regular milk. I believe it's whole milk. It's just whatever I had on hand. Now that we're adding the milk, we absolutely do not want this to come back up to a boil. We're not trying to change the texture. The milk is just going to give it a very creamy texture and make it nice and warm for a wonderful soup. I'm going to add a little more pepper. And it's time for some parsley, homegrown parsley from the garden. There's nothing better. Grew the parsley, and then I dried it in my Excalibur dehydrator. And hopefully it gets me to the spring where I can plant some more, because that's my last jar of parsley. So let's get that all mixed up. Look at that yummy goodness. The yummy goodness. All right. I have all of the ingredients in except for the cheese, and I am going to add the cheese at the very last minute. We're going to simmer for another 5 minutes, and then this soup will be done by just adding the cheese. And then we'll do a taste test. I'm going to leave the top off for the simmer, and then we'll come right back. So the soup is nice and thick. Let's take a look at it there. Look at that. The milk coming around the broccoli. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add our cheese. So I have looks like about a cup of Parmesan cheese that I grated earlier. And this is about 2 cups of calico cheese that I buy from Azure Standard in 5-pound blocks. If you buy shredded cheese from the store, it actually has a coating, an anti-sticking caking coating on it. And so when you try to put it into a dish, it kind of gums it up and it gets kind of gritty. If you buy your cheese on a block and shred it up, you don't have that coating, and it gives you a better overall texture. So let's add, I'm going to use all of it. So I normally shred my cheese with my KitchenAid mixer, and I put it in vacuum seal bags, and then I freeze it, and I pull it out the freezer when I need it. That way, once I get the whole block, I already have it down in the sizes that I need it to be in for use, and I don't have to worry about the anti-caking agent. And the cheese is actually amazing, and it's so much cheaper too. To buy a 5-pound block of organic cheese is just more cost effective. So I have this down on a very low heat. Let's let that cheese go ahead and break down, and after that we'll get it plated up. Be back in just a moment. All right, the cheese has completely melted. Let's do a taste test. It's good. Seasoned perfectly. Love it. Now we'll plate it up so you can see the yummy goodness. There you have it. There's our food all plated up, all the yummy goodness. I topped the soup, the broccoli and cheese soup, with parsley and fresh ground pepper. There's some homemade French bread on the side. All right, that's it for broccoli and cheese soup. Thanks for joining me. Now it's time for us to dig in to this greatness. If you've enjoyed this video and you found it useful or helpful in any way, please give me a thumbs up and like the video and subscribe to my channel where I will have other recipes and canning and gardening and DIY projects. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. God bless.